The grand chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with light that bounced off crystalline walls and illuminated representatives from over 200 species. Some floated in special atmosphere tanks. Others stood on gravity platforms. A few existed as pure energy contained in mechanical shells. All of them turned their attention, eyes, sensors, or whatever they used to perceive the world, toward the entrance as the doors slid open. Ambassador John Miller walked in with 5 other humans beside him. They wore simple blue suits with the Earth flag on their shoulders. Compared to the ornate clothing and natural magnificence of the other species, they looked plain and unremarkable, just as they had been told to expect. "Nervous?" whispered Susan Lee, his deputy. John gave a slight nod. This moment represented the culmination of decades of human space exploration and first contact protocols. Humanity had finally been invited to present their case for joining the galactic community after alien observers had made themselves known to Earth's governments 3 years earlier. At the center of the chamber stood the Speaker's Circle, a platform where representatives could address the entire council. The humans were directed toward it by a small floating drone. "Earth delegation," announced a mechanical voice that echoed through the chamber. "You may present your petition for observer status." John stepped onto the platform, which adjusted to his height and atmospheric preferences automatically. He took a deep breath and began the speech he had practiced hundreds of times. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, I bring greetings from Earth and its 8 billion inhabitants. We come seeking friendship and knowledge, offering our own unique perspective and contributions to the galactic community." He continued for several minutes, outlining humanity's history, achievements, and potential. The chamber remained respectfully silent, various species using translation devices to understand his words. When John finished, a brief silence followed. Then, a tall reptilian being with iridescent scales and 4 eyes stepped forward. The Zoraxian High Chancellor, according to the briefing materials Earth had received. "We thank the Earth representative for his enthusiastic presentation," the Zoraxian said, his mouth forming what might have been a smile. "However, before the Council considers even observer status for new species, we must discuss certain concerns." The atmosphere in the room shifted. John felt a sudden tension that hadn't been there before. "We have been monitoring Earth for some time," continued the Chancellor, "as is our standard protocol with developing worlds. What we have observed raises serious questions about humanity's readiness to join the galactic community." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing images of Earth, war zones, environmental disasters, poverty, and violence. "These humans fight among themselves constantly," the Zoraxian noted. "They destroy their own environment. They allow vast inequality among their population. Their technology is primitive, their politics divisive, and their history bloody." John stepped forward. "With respect, Chancellor, we have made great progress in addressing these issues. All species evolve and grow." "Indeed," interrupted the Chancellor, "and humans have had sufficient time to evolve beyond these primitive behaviors, yet you persist in them." Other representatives began to murmur in agreement. A gelatinous being from the Meldorian delegation spoke next. "Our studies indicate that humans are still functioning primarily on emotional responses rather than logical analysis. Their decision-making processes are fundamentally flawed." John tried to respond, but another representative cut him off, a crystalline entity that glowed with blue light. "Their technological development is concerning as well. They have developed weapons before developing proper interstellar travel. This sequence indicates a species that cannot be trusted with advanced knowledge." One by one, representatives rose to point out humanity's flaws. John and his team stood in stunned silence as their petition transformed into a trial. Finally, the Zoraxian Chancellor raised his hand for silence. "Based on these observations, I propose that Earth be classified as a protected observation planet Category 3. This would restrict human expansion to their home system only, with limited contact with approved council representatives for educational purposes." John's deputy whispered urgently. "That's a quarantine. They're voting to cage us in our own system." The vote happened quickly. Representatives signaled their choices through their neural interfaces with the council systems. The results appeared on the holographic display for all to see. Favor: 187 species against 13 species. Abstain: 21 species. The Zoraxian Chancellor looked at John with what appeared to be pity. The motion carries. Earth is hereby classified as a protected observation planet. You will be permitted to return to your world and explain the situation to your governments. A council liaison will be assigned to monitor your development until such time as humanity reaches an acceptable level of civilization. The chamber erupted in conversation. Many representatives were already leaving. The matter settled in their minds. The humans stood frozen on the platform, the magnitude of what had just happened sinking in. "Ambassador," Susan whispered, "we need to respond." John nodded slowly. He stepped forward once more and raised his voice. "Point of procedure, Chancellor." The Zoraxian turned back, clearly annoyed at being delayed. "Yes, Earth Representative? Am I permitted a closing statement before we depart?" The Chancellor waved a scaled hand dismissively. "If you must, the decision will not change." John walked back to the speaker's circle. The chamber quieted again, though with much less interest than before. Most expected him to plead or protest, the typical reaction of species when they received unfavorable rulings. Instead, John's face remained perfectly calm. When he spoke, his voice was steady and quiet, forcing everyone to listen closely. Throughout human history, we have made one mistake. Repeatedly, we have underestimated those we considered beneath us. We have assumed that different means inferior. It has led to our greatest tragedies, but also our greatest growth. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as he could. Today, you have made that same mistake with us. You have judged us by your standards, found us wanting, and decided we should be contained until we become more like you. The Zoraxian Chancellor shifted uncomfortably. Something in the human's tone had changed. "So I will leave you with this thought," John continued. "Humans are indeed emotional. We feel joy, grief, love, and yes, anger, more intensely than you might understand. When we are challenged, when we are cornered, when we are told we cannot do something." He paused, allowing the silence to stretch. "You have no idea what you've just done." With that, he stepped off the platform. The human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber without being dismissed, a breach of protocol that caused gasps among the more traditional representatives. 3 weeks later, President Samantha Powell stood before a joint session of the United Nations. The recordings from the Galactic Council had been shared with every government on Earth. "We have been judged," she said to the assembled leaders. "We have been found wanting. We have been caged." She paused, looking at the grim faces before her. "They believe this will force us to change according to their standards, to become like them. But that is not the human way." A murmur of agreement ran through the chamber. "Instead, we will show them exactly who we are. Operation Phoenix begins today. Every nation, every resource, every mind focused on one goal: to break free of their chains and take our rightful place among the stars." In that moment, Earth changed forever. Old rivalries were set aside. Resources were redirected. The brightest minds were recruited. For the first time in human history, the entire planet united with a single purpose. And as Admiral Frank Collins later remarked to his officers, "God help the galaxy when humans get truly mad." The snow fell gently outside the underground complex in Montana. 5 years had passed since the day humans learned they were not alone in the universe, and that the universe thought very little of them. What the aliens saw from orbit looked like business as usual, humans going about their daily lives, accepting their cosmic punishment like obedient children. They could not have been more wrong. 200 feet below the surface, Dr. Kevin Hayes rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in 3 days, but he was close to a breakthrough. The small piece of alien technology recovered from the diplomatic mission sat on his workbench, partially disassembled. Most scientists would have treated the artifact with careful reverence. Kevin had taken a hammer to it on day 1, You broke it open like a coconut, his assistant Megan said, bringing him a cup of coffee. Sometimes the best way to understand something is to see how it breaks, Kevin replied with a small smile. Besides, they think we're monkeys. I just proved them right. But Kevin was no monkey. By destroying the outer shell of the device, he had discovered something the aliens never intended anyone to find: the core of their propulsion technology. The principles were unlike anything humans had theorized, but not beyond their understanding. That was the thing about humans that the aliens had failed to grasp. Humans didn't evolve knowledge steadily. They made leaps. Across the continent, in a repurposed airplane hangar in Nevada, Major Nicole Jordan watched as her pilots ran through the simulation for the 10th time that day. The cockpits looked like something from an old science fiction movie, cobbled together from Earth technology with occasional alien-inspired upgrades. Again, she ordered, as the team failed to clear the objective. The pilots groaned but reset their stations. "Major, we've been at this for 16 hours, complained Lieutenant Rivera. Nicole walked over and leaned close to him. The Zoraxian pilots we'll be facing have been flying for 40 years without a break. They don't get tired, they don't get hungry, they don't miss their families. All they know is that humans are weak and need rest. Are you going to prove them right?" Rivera straightened in his seat. "No, ma'am. Running simulation again." Nicole nodded and stepped back. She didn't mention that Zoraxian pilots actually required rest cycles too. The difference was that humans could push past normal limits when motivated, and nothing motivated like anger and pride. In Washington, President Samantha Powell sat in the Oval Office reviewing updates from around the world. Operation Phoenix had united former enemies in ways no peace treaty ever could. Chinese quantum computing experts worked alongside American engineers. Russian tactical specialists trained with European special forces. Indian programmers collaborated with Brazilian aerospace designers. The latest test of the Ghost Drive was successful, her chief of staff reported. "Dr. Hayes says we can begin production next month." "And the weapon systems?" Samantha asked, flipping through the report. "Engineer Jackson has something he wants you to see personally. He says it will change everything." The president nodded and stood up. "Then let's not keep him waiting." 3 hours later, she stood in a heavily guarded facility in Arizona, watching as Steve Jackson demonstrated his creation. Unlike the sleek energy weapons the aliens used, Steve had gone in a completely different direction. "We call it the Rock Hopper," he explained as the large, ugly device hummed to life. "It doesn't look like much, but that's the point." On the screen, they watched as the test platform fired at a replica of Zoraxian shield technology. Instead of the expected energy beam, the weapon fired what looked like ordinary metal slugs. The shields flickered blue as they tried to repel. The attack then failed completely as the projectiles passed through. "They designed their shields to stop energy weapons and other advanced projectiles," Steve explained with a grin. "But they never bothered protecting against simple kinetic impacts. Why would they? No advanced species would use something so primitive." President Powell smiled. "Sometimes the old ways work best." In orbit above Earth, hidden from alien detection systems by technology that shouldn't have existed, the first ships of humanity's fleet were taking shape. They didn't look impressive, deliberately so. Earth had learned that appearance could be deceiving. Engineer Jackson's team had designed them to appear cobbled together, like the first desperate attempts of a primitive species to reach the stars. But beneath the rough exterior lay systems that would shock anyone who had dismissed humanity. On one such ship, the EDS Defiant, Captain Gregory Baker walked the corridors, inspecting the final preparations. Unlike the gleaming white hallways of alien vessels, these were practical with exposed pipes and visible wiring. Every inch of space was used. Nothing was wasted. "How's the crew coming along?" he asked his executive officer, Commander Diaz. "They're ready, sir. Scared, but ready." Greg nodded. "Fear keeps you sharp, just make sure it doesn't keep them frozen." Meanwhile, on a distant world known as Trellis, Intelligence Officer Eric Mitchell sat at a bar frequented by aliens from across the galaxy. To any observer, he appeared to be just another trader, one of the few humans allowed off-world for essential commerce. "The Council thinks the quarantine is holding," his contact whispered. A member of the Nelvarian species who had opposed Earth's treatment from the beginning. They have no idea what's coming. Eric sipped his drink, which burned his human throat but kept up appearances. Neither do we, friend. That's what makes humans dangerous. We surprise even ourselves. Back on Earth, in a converted university hall, diplomat Olivia Garcia conducted her weekly call with the Galactic Council liaison. As always, she played the part of the humble human, grateful for any scraps of attention from the superior species. We hope the Council might reconsider allowing educational exchanges, she suggested meekly. Our universities are eager to learn. The Zoraxian on screen made a sound that translated as dismissive laughter. Your learning institutions would not comprehend even the basics of our knowledge. Perhaps in another century we can discuss simple, cultural exchanges. Of course, Olivia replied with downcast eyes. We understand our limitations. After the call ended, she straightened and played back the recording. Hidden in the background of the transmission were details of the Zoraxian fleet positions and patrol schedules, information that would be very useful very soon. As the 5th anniversary of Earth's humiliation approached, President Powell called a secure meeting of the Phoenix leadership. Representatives from every part of the operation gathered in a room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. 5 years ago, they looked down on us and saw a species barely worth acknowledging, she said, looking around the room. They labeled us primitive, emotional, and unpredictable. They weren't wrong about the last part. Laughter rippled through the room. Tomorrow we launch Phase 2. Our ships will break quarantine not as beggars seeking acceptance, but as a force demanding respect. We don't need their permission to join the galactic community. We're taking our place. Dr. Hayes raised his hand. The alien technology we've adapted still has limitations. We're not as advanced as they are in many areas. No, the president agreed. But we have something they don't understand. Major Jordan finished the thought. We have something to prove. As dawn broke across Earth the next day, humanity prepared to show the galaxy exactly what happened when humans got mad. The quarantine was about to be broken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The mining colony of Krell 9 orbited a small rocky planet on the edge of Zoraxian space. It was not an important place in the grand scheme of the galaxy. The minerals it produced were common, the facility itself was aging, and the 3,000 Zoraxians who worked there were not elite members of their society. This made it the perfect target. Captain Gregory Baker stood on the bridge of the EDS Vengeance, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the final preparations. The ship had dropped out of hyperspace just beyond the system's detection grid, along with 5 other vessels of Earth's newly created fleet. From the outside, the ships looked rough and unfinished, intentionally so. Status report, Greg ordered, his voice calm despite the weight of history on his shoulders. These would be the first human warships to engage an alien target. Ever. Lieutenant Paula Myers responded from the tactical station. All systems nominal, Captain. Ghost drives functioning at full capacity. The colony's sensors haven't detected us. And our guests? The neutral observers are in the observation deck as ordered, sir. They seem nervous. Greg allowed himself a small smile. Good. They should be. The observers were representatives from 3 minor species who had neither supported nor opposed Earth's quarantine. They had been carefully selected and secretly brought aboard through Eric Mitchell's network of contacts. What they were about to witness would spread throughout the galaxy far more effectively than any human broadcast. Commence Operation Thunderclap, Greg ordered. The small fleet of human ships suddenly accelerated toward the colony, their engines flaring to life. On Krell 9, alarms began to sound as the unexpected visitors finally appeared on their scanners. Inbao. The colony's command center, Governor Zexvar, received the alert with confusion. Unregistered vessels approaching? Impossible. No one travels this far out without proper clearance. He turned to his security chief. Visual identification? The security chief's 4 eyes widened in disbelief. They appear to be human ships. Governor. Humans? Zexvar laughed, his scaled skin rippling with amusement. Impossible. They are confined to their system. Nevertheless, these ships match no known configuration but bear Earth markings. The governor's amusement faded. Raise shields and contact Central Command. Tell them we have an unusual situation. He wasn't particularly worried. Even if these were somehow human vessels, Zoraxian defense technology was centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. Back on the Vengeance, Greg gave the signal. Begin Phase 1. From the lead ship, 6 small objects launched toward the colony. They looked like simple missiles which caused the Zoraxian defense systems to target them immediately. Energy beams lashed out from the colony's defense grid, striking the incoming projectiles. Nothing happened. The objects continued on their course, completely unaffected by weapons that could vaporize solid rock. In the colony command center, the security chief frantically adjusted settings. "Governor, our weapons have no effect." "Impossible," Zexvar snapped. "Increase power." The defense grid fired again, this time at maximum strength. Again, the projectiles flew on undisturbed. "How?" the governor whispered. Aboard the Vengeance, Lieutenant Myers explained to the alien observers, "We call them ghost drones. They exist partially out of phase with normal space. Your weapons pass right through them." The observers watched in stunned silence as the drones reached the colony and attached themselves to key points on the defense grid. Seconds later, every weapon on Krell 9 went dark. "Phase 2, ordered Captain Baker. Marine Commander Diane Foster stood in the dropship with her team, 20 of Earth's finest soldiers equipped with armor that looked primitive compared to Zoraxian battlesuits, but contained technology that would shock their opponents. "Remember," she told her team, "no casualties. Unless absolutely necessary, this isn't revenge, it's a message." The dropships launched from the human fleet, racing toward the now defenseless colony. Zoraxian security forces scrambled to their positions, laser rifles charged and ready. They might have lost their heavy weapons, but they still outnumbered the humans significantly. The first dropship landed in the colony's main plaza. The Zoraxians took aim, ready to vaporize whatever emerged. The doors opened and a small metal ball rolled out. "That's it?" One Zoraxian guard laughed. "A primitive grenade?" The ball suddenly pulsed with energy, and every powered device in a 100-meter radius, including their weapons, shut down completely. Before the guards could react, Commander Foster's team emerged from the dropship. Their movements were impossibly fast, their armor seemingly immune to the few functioning weapons the Zoraxians had left. Within minutes, the main security hub was under human control. Similar scenes played out across the colony as Lieutenant Ryan Phillips led a tech team straight to the communications center. Unlike the Marines, his team carried no obvious weapons. They didn't need them. The communications officer tried to send an emergency signal to the Zoraxian homeworld, but found his console responding to commands he hadn't given. "Looking for this?" Ryan asked as he walked calmly into the room, holding up a small device. "We took control of your systems 10 minutes ago." Throughout the colony, screens flickered to life with the same message in Zoraxian script. "Your colony is now under Earth. Control. Remain calm. No harm will come to cooperating individuals." Governor Zexvar was escorted to his own office, where Captain Baker now sat behind his desk. "This is an act of war," the governor sputtered. "The council will destroy your species for this." Greg leaned forward. "No, this is a demonstration. If we wanted war, you wouldn't be alive to complain about it." He gestured to the window where the governor could see the human ships in orbit. From this distance, their rough appearance was even more obvious. They looked like they had been cobbled together from scrap, which was exactly what humans wanted the Zoraxians to think. "Those ships of yours," Zexvar said with forced confidence. "Primitive constructions. Our battle fleet will tear them apart." Greg smiled. "You still don't understand, do you? We wanted you to see these ships. We wanted you to report how crude they look. Because when your mighty fleet arrives expecting to face primitive technology, they'll be in for a surprise." Elsewhere in the colony, Commander Foster's team secured the mining operation while treating the Zoraxian workers with unexpected courtesy. Many had expected to be killed or at least mistreated by the supposedly savage humans. Instead, they received medical attention for minor injuries and were allowed to continue their normal routines under supervision. One young Zoraxian worker gathered the courage to approach a human Marine. "Why are you not killing us?" The Council said humans were violent primitives. The Marine removed her helmet, revealing a woman's face with dark skin and determined eyes. "We're here to prove them wrong about some things," she said, "and right about others." As the day progressed, the neutral observers were shown throughout the colony. They witnessed human technology defeating supposedly superior Zoraxian systems. They saw human soldiers showing restraint and discipline. Most importantly, they saw the fear in Zoraxian eyes being replaced by confusion and, in some cases, respect. 24 hours after the first human ship appeared, Captain Baker stood before the colony's full population. Beside him stood Governor Zexvar, who had finally accepted the reality of his situation. "People of Krell 9, Greg began, his words translated by technology that shouldn't have existed yet, according to Zoraxian understanding of human development. "You will be allowed to continue your operations here. You may communicate with your homeworld to inform them of what has happened." He turned to address the recording devices that would carry his message across the galaxy. "To the Galactic Council, the quarantine you imposed on humanity ends today. This colony is just one of many targets we could have chosen. We selected it because no one needed to die today. Remember that? We could have destroyed everything here, but chose not to. This is just one fleet of many. The quarantine ends now, or we will end it ourselves." As the human forces withdrew to their ships, leaving the colony intact but shaken, news of the bloodless takeover began spreading throughout the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council faced something they had never anticipated: a species that refused to accept its assigned place in the cosmic order. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were angry. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted 3 full rotations. Representatives from 200 species argued, threatened, and pleaded as reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The humans had not stopped with Krell 9. In the span of just 1 week, they had launched coordinated strikes against 17 military installations, 4 shipyards, and 3 training academies, all without a single reported casualty. High Chancellor Drex of the Zoraxian Empire slammed his fist against the speaking platform, silencing the chamber. "This cannot stand. These primitives have violated the quarantine and attacked sovereign territories of council members. I call for immediate military action." The council voted overwhelmingly in favor. Within hours, the largest combined fleet in galactic history set course for the Sol system. Over 2,000 warships from 30 different species, all united by a common fear. If humans could do this much damage while showing restraint, what would they do if truly provoked? On Earth, Admiral Frank Collins stood in the Planetary Defense Center, watching as the council fleet approached. Behind him, President Powell and her war cabinet waited for his assessment. "They've arrived exactly where we predicted," Frank said, pointing to the display showing the massive alien armada emerging from hyperspace just beyond the orbit of Neptune, right inside the trap. The president nodded. "Are the platforms in position?" "Yes, ma'am." Operation Scattered Thunder is ready. For 5 years, humanity had been building more than just ships. Throughout the solar system, disguised as research, stations, communication satellites, and mining operations, they had constructed a network of defense platforms unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On the lead council vessel, Fleet Commander Voxlar studied the readings with satisfaction. The humans had only a small defensive fleet in orbit, perhaps 50 ships compared to his 2,000. This would be over quickly. "Begin the approach," he ordered. "First wave, prepare to engage." The massive fleet moved forward, spreading out, to surround Earth from all directions. Their sensors detected the small human ships moving to intercept, but nothing else of concern. "They're sending their entire fleet against our forward section," Voxlar noted with amusement. "Foolish. They cannot hope to stop even a fraction of our forces." His tactical officer nodded in agreement. "Their ships are still using the same primitive designs we observed at Krell 9. No match for our technology. As the Council fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, Admiral Collins gave the order. Activate Scattered Thunder. Throughout the solar system, hundreds of hidden platforms suddenly came to life. The Council fleet found itself surrounded not by 50 ships, but by a web of defensive stations that had been invisible to their scanners. Before they could react, the platforms fired. But they did not fire energy weapons or missiles. Instead, they released clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust that spread rapidly through space, engulfing large sections of the alien fleet. On the Council flagship, alarms blared as systems began failing across dozens of ships. "What is happening?" Voxlar demanded. "Unknown, Commander," his science officer replied frantically. "The particles are microscopic machines. They're infiltrating our ships through the hull seams and disabling our systems. The nanomachines, another primitive technology the advanced species had abandoned centuries ago as inefficient, swarmed through the alien vessels, targeting weapons, engines, and communications, but carefully avoiding life support. Meanwhile, the small human fleet engaged the forward section of the Council armada. The alien commanders expected an easy victory, but were shocked when their advanced weapons seemed to pass right through the human vessels. In the defense center, Dr. Lisa Martinez watched as her creation performed perfectly. "The phase shields are holding," she reported. "Their targeting systems can't get a lock on our real positions." Another section of the Council fleet found itself facing a different kind of defense. As they approached Earth's orbit, the sun itself seemed to flare in response. Massive solar prominences reached out into space, forming a barrier of plasma that no ship could penetrate. "The solar shield is online," Dr. Martinez announced. "Section 3 is contained." President Powell watched the battle unfold with a grim expression. This was not a moment for celebration. Every action had been calculated to minimize loss of life while maximizing psychological impact. Humanity was not fighting to destroy the Council fleet, but to change the galaxy's perception forever. On the Council flagship, now drifting powerless except for basic life support, Voxlar received a transmission. The face of a human woman appeared on his screen. "This is Commander Nicole Jordan of Earth Defense Forces. Your ship has been disabled but not destroyed. Your crew is safe. We will be boarding shortly." Minutes later, Commander Jordan led a team onto the alien flagship. Unlike the Marines at Krell 9, her soldiers wore advanced powered armor that even the Council's military experts viewed with shock. "Your technology," one alien officer said as they were escorted to a secure area. "It should not be possible." The development curve you predicted for us," Nicole interrupted. "We don't follow your rules." Across the solar system, the pattern repeated. Council ships found themselves disabled by technologies they had considered theoretical at best, obsolete at worst. Within 6 hours, over 80% of the invasion fleet had been neutralized without a single ship being destroyed. In the aftermath, as human forces secured the disabled fleet, Admiral Collins received an urgent message from one of Earth's secondary fleets, deployed throughout the galaxy. "Sir, Operation Lighthouse is complete. All 27 targets secured." While the Council had concentrated their forces on Earth, humanity had sent smaller fleets to strategic locations throughout Council space. Critical shipyards, command centers, and military academies now found themselves under human control. Each operation followed the same pattern: overwhelming technological superiority, precise application of force, and zero casualties. On the Council homeworlds, panic spread as news of the failed invasion reached them. Species that had once looked down on humans now found themselves vulnerable, their defenses designed to counter threats they understood, not the unpredictable approaches humans had developed. In the Earth Defense Center, President Powell reviewed the reports with her cabinet. The human victory had been more complete than anyone had dared hope, but she took no joy in it. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered. "Send the message to Voxlar." On the captured flagship, the alien commander received a direct transmission from Earth. President Powell's face appeared on his screen, her expression solemn rather than triumphant. "Commander Voxlar, your fleet has been defeated. Your forces throughout Council space have been neutralized. We now control key installations across 30 systems. She paused, letting the information sink in. However, not a single life has been lost. Your ships can be restored. Your bases can be returned. We don't want war. We never did. But we will not be caged. Her eyes hardened slightly, the only indication of the anger that had driven humanity for 5 years. You have 48 hours to call for an emergency council session. After that, we will be forced to demonstrate that today's operation was conducted with restraint. I suggest you do not test our resolve further. As the transmission ended, Voxlar looked out the viewport at the Earth hanging in space. The planet seemed small and vulnerable, a blue marble against the blackness. But now he understood what the first human ambassador had meant 5 years ago. They had no idea what they had done when they caged humanity, and now the galaxy was about to pay the price for that mistake, unless they could find a way to make peace with the species they had so gravely underestimated. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador John Miller walked in. 5 years ago, he had left this room in humiliation. Today, he returned with a different purpose. Behind him came Earth's delegation. Admiral Collins, Dr. Martinez, Dr. White, and Commander Jordan, the architects of humanity's impossible victory. High Chancellor Drex of the Zoraxians no longer looked smug. His scales had paled, and his 4 eyes constantly darted toward the exits. All around the chamber, representatives from species who had supported the quarantine now avoided looking directly at the humans. The emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session, announced the neutral mediator, an ancient being from a species known for their fairness. Earth has requested the floor. John stepped forward, his face showing no emotion. He had practiced this moment for 5 years. 5 years ago, I stood in this chamber and was told that humans were too primitive, too emotional, and too unpredictable to join the galactic community, he began, his voice calm. Today I return to inform you that we will be joining regardless of your opinion on the matter. Murmurs spread through the chamber. A brave Zoraxian counselor rose to speak. Your actions have been acts of war. You cannot expect our actions, John interrupted, were restrained demonstrations of capability. Not a single life was lost. Had we wanted war, none of you would be in this room today. The chamber fell silent again. On the main display, images appeared showing human fleets positioned near the homeworlds of every species that had voted for the quarantine. Dr. White stepped forward. For your education, we have prepared a brief overview of human technological advancement over the past 5 years. The display changed to show the systems humanity had developed. Phase-shifting technology that made ships nearly invulnerable, nanomachines that could disable rather than destroy, weapons that exploited fundamental gaps in alien defensive systems. We developed more in 5 years than your projections suggested would take us 5 centuries, Dr. White explained. This is what happens when humans are challenged. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them, a representative from a minor species that had remained neutral during the quarantine vote, stood up. We moved to recognize Earth as a full council member, effective immediately. Others quickly joined, their votes clearly motivated by fear rather than respect. But it was a start. Ambassador Miller raised his hand. That will not be sufficient. We have terms. He outlined the conditions: equal status for Earth, reparations for the quarantine, and most importantly, a restructuring of the Council itself to prevent any group of species from dominating others. The Sol Accords, he called it, placing a data crystal on the central platform. A new framework for galactic cooperation. High Chancellor Drex finally found his voice. These demands are outrageous. We cannot. Admiral Collins stepped forward, his military uniform decorated with the simple stars of his rank. You misunderstand. These are not demands open for negotiation. They are the terms of your surrender. The voting was brief. Faced with human fleets at their homeworlds and the demonstration of Earth's technological superiority, the Council had no choice but to accept. As the Earth delegation prepared to leave, Chancellor Drex approached John Miller. How? He asked simply, How did you advance so quickly? John looked at him with a small smile. You gave us the one thing humans have always needed to achieve the impossible, a reason to get mad. He paused, then added, next time, perhaps just invite us for dinner instead. As they walked out, Dr. Martinez whispered, do you think they've learned their lesson? Ambassador Miller glanced back at the chamber, where the once mighty council now scrambled to adapt to a galaxy where humans had a seat at the table. They're starting to, he said, and that's enough for today.